Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 8 breakdown for the TCG Player 2K Invitational Qualifier for Lorcana. And if you guys kind of know the competitive scene for this game, it's kind of in a weird spot where there aren't really big tournaments officially for the card game, and so finding events to cover and the events that do happen that are on the larger side, there it's a little bit trickier to get all the deck lists and information. But I do really want to thank Mr. Scott Mines for this article they wrote for TCG Player, going over the event and having like all the details and all the deck lists and everything. I would not be able to make this video or pretty much even know about this event without it, so really do appreciate that. And then also Apex Gaming Lorcana are their YouTube here for streaming the entire event. If you guys want to see the gameplay, it's going to be linked again in the description or on my website as well. So again, big thanks to the Lost Boys for hosting the event, for TCG Player and Apex Gaming for sponsoring it, and again to Scott Mines for their original article, which again you guys can find in the description as well as linked on this page if you guys want to see it, and everything else. So that aside, I do want to go over my thoughts on this tournament. And the pie chart, it is, again, it's a little bit tricky to like show color distribution or like deck list distribution in this, even though this one was, I'd say, more standardized than what I've seen previously. We saw 6 Amethyst, 4 Ruby, 2 Amber, 2 Steel, and 2 Emerald, and also all of the pairings kind of lined up the same. So we had Amber and Steel be the only kind of color combination there, Amethyst and Emerald, and then also Amethyst and Ruby. So pretty only like 3 different color combinations, but there are some unique decks for that as well. And we do see that Amethyst, I think, is generically the best color in this game. It's the one that's been seeing the most success, mostly because it does get 2 different kind of splashes of decks. So I think Amethyst and Ruby is generically the best control deck that we have right now, and then also Amethyst and Emerald is doing a really good job. Then otherwise than that, Amber and Steel, and then Sapphire is not really finding its footing as much as the other colors are, which is quite a shame. But it is kind of nice to see like at least 5 of the 6 colors are pretty viable into this card game in general. So especially for a first set, I think that's pretty good for a start there. So we're going to go over 4 of the top 8 lists, mostly the ones that are the top placing for each one of the color combinations that we have. And we're going to start off with our first place copy of Amber and Steel. So this is Nicholas's first place list here, and we do have like 2 different versions of this list. So we'll go over the other one after this, but I do think this is kind of like a standard of what the evolution for both of these colors are. It is a little bit of like the Stitch Rush one, because we do have a lot of these 1s and 2 drops that not only have a lot of good value, but also you can use them to kind of rush down and get a lot of lore quickly if your opponent doesn't have any clear for them. Lilo and Stitch, I think both cards are generally known as good cards in this format, especially since Stitch can go into the 6 drop here, which does get a lot of card draw and kind of facilitates a lot of the draw engine for this deck. We also do have the Steel part, so Captain Hook is great, and something that I've been seeing a little bit more often is the 5-drop Captain Hook, just because you can shift into this for cheap for 3, and then you can also use it to sing some of your better songs, which is really nice, since we do have so many good 5 songs, including A Whole New World and Grab Your Sword at 4 and 3 copies, and then also Be Our Guest, since we do have to run some songs to help get some hits off our Ariel, which also is a singer for 5. So all that synergy is great there. And then our last kind of singer is Tinkerbell, which again, I don't have to explain how good this card is. I think everyone's kind of understood that this is probably one of the best cards in the game, especially since you can shift off the 3-drop Tinkerbell, can sing all of your songs, and also get some board clear on top of it. So very good in that sense. And then kind of some of the additional other cards that we're adding for here. The newer ones, like this Aladdin is a newer card that I've seen. It does have only 1 health, which is a bit of a downside, but the fact that it does get 2 lore is fantastic. And so if we don't see our Lilo on our turn 1, instead we can play like Aladdin turn 2, and we can still protect it with our Simba, which is nice. Prince Eric, not only is it a challenger and can become a 3/3, but the 3 health is important enough that it can survive a Grab Your Sword, and then you can easy get some heals with it with Rapunzel and get the additional card draw from there as well. And then the kind of top bottom end of just like, again, like you have these actions, Fire the Cannons and Smash, being able to use those to get the removal of some trickier cards, and like being able to reset hands and with these other ones. So that's kind of this version of it, and I think this has kind of shown its strength over the last couple of weeks of not only the consistency of the card draw, but it has a really good like combo engine towards the end game. And if you're not playing against steel, or like if it's not red, if they haven't found their be prepared, like you can just win on the spot with how much advantage you can kind of pump out with this build. So that is the list here. Congratulations to Nicholas. And also, while we're talking about amber and steel, I do want to go about talking about John Mann's 4th place amber steel variant is too. You will see a couple of the similar suspects. We do see like RL, you see Rapunzel, but we also see, and like the Tinkerbell engine, which we do have the 3-drop and the 4-drop, but we do have a little bit more of like the steel top end, and not as much as like the combo with the Stitch, but more of just like the generic value you can get from this one. So some additional cards we do see for this is that we do see the Hans, which this does get you a lot of advantage by being a 3/3 that's able to quest and then also deal damage anywhere, which is quite nice. We do also have the 2 copies of Moana, which is just generically a good 3 quester. I think that's really the only reason we have it. It is also a 5 cost, which means you can sing again your important songs of like Grab Your Sword. The rest of these are more just songs that we can find from Ariel to get hand advantage than anything else. You also have the 4 copies of Have You Forgotten Me, which You Have Forgotten Me, which is such a good card for destruction. And I think if you have a hard time against Ruby and Amber and Ruby, Amethyst and Ruby, this does get this card from them and can stop them from kind of setting up, which is really nice. Other than that, we do see like a couple of these tech cards. I do think like Moana is a good spot. Beast I do like having in my steel deck just because it is like an inkable card. It's a 4/4 for 2 lore, which is good stats there, and being able to banish an item against some of like the more control builds I think is strong for you there. And you don't really have a cost for doing it either. And then you also have like Cerberus, same thing. It's a 5/6. It's hard to get remove this card outright. It only does have 1 lore associated with it, but it is good and it can sing your 5 songs. And then also the Stitch to be able to regain your draw later in the game, especially since we do have some of these like heavier, like harder to remove cards with high health totals, which is good for Rapunzel to get that healing for you. Stitch can additionally be played and get the additional draw, which isn't too terrible for you. So like this is like, you'll definitely see like the difference between these 2 decks of, again, this is more low to the ground and be a little bit faster and more aggressive. And this one I'd say is more value outright and trying to kind of last your opponent out on resources and kind of capitalize on that too. So like this build too. I haven't tried this one as much, but I'm looking forward to testing it. Congratulations to John for their top 4 finish there. For the rest of the top 4, we do have Matthew's 2nd place copy of Ruby and Amethyst. And we did have Ruby and Amethyst take 4 whole spots in this top 8. And they aren't the exact same, but I will say they're generically the same kind of play style. If you are looking into going to this deck, obviously I think is the strongest one and deck to beat in a lot of ways, just because it does have essentially like options for every situation, or can potentially get there. Sometimes your card draw is a little bit low, but you do have access to friends on the other side, and Be Prepared, probably 2 of the most important songs in this game, and 2 of the most powerful ones. Being able to draw 2 is very good, but also being able to clear your opponent's board is also very, very good. So I think both of those are kind of cornerstones for what makes this deck work. We have a couple items in Shield of Virtue, Magic Mirror, and White Rabbit's Pocket Watch as well, if you want to get some additional like rush cards. But just the fact that you do have these clunky big boys in the end, you can stall out your opponent by using like Gaston, which is able to trade favorably in a lot of the early game. Elsa being able to get some freeze, even though we're only running 1, but being able to exert. Rafiki as well, being able to get like an easy 3 damage into something to get that trade. And then also Aladdin is fantastic for not only stopping your opponent's lore, but the fact that it can shift into our 4-drop, which means that you're able to, this is a 7 cost, so this can sing Be Prepared earlier than you can, which is great as long as you have 5 lore or 5 ink to get into it. But then the daring exploit during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you gain 2 lore and your opponent loses 2. So being able to get like a 3 lore deficit with just playing this Aladdin, shifting to this the next turn, you get that advantage. Very good there. Maui, probably one of the best removal cards. It's Rush and Reckless. So normally like the first hit is free and then your opponent can kind of play around it on the second hit, but that's very good removal for you there. And then also the Ursula, which I have been liking this one a little bit more, being able to, essentially it's a 7 cost, which is a little expensive, but it's a 2/8, which is hard to remove. It gains 3 lore, and then also the fact that it makes your opponent lose a lore and you get to draw a card. is good in my book too. So I think that's something that more people are probably on. The fact that it also costs 7 means it can sing Be Prepared if you need it to, which is nice. And then the kind of top end of Elsa, Mickey Mouse, and Maleficent that we've been seeing pretty common for the decks as well. So the only issue with this deck is that obviously like you do have a lot of non-inkable cards you have to be careful with, like Dragonfire, your Elsa, your Ursula, and your Rafiki. But then like the bottom end, like you do have a good amount of like songs that you can put in there if you need. I don't think you'd ever ink Friends on the Other Side unless you're desperate, but there it is there. So again, this is Matthew's second place list. Congratulations for their second place finish there. And then to wrap it up, we do have the Amethyst and Emerald list. And I think that most of these are pretty understood what these look like at this point. This is honestly one of my favorite decks to play in the format too. It's very fast, it's very obnoxious, and sometimes it's really hard to interact with because of how fast it is and this how much lore you get and how fast you get it. So obviously Flynn Rider is a very good card for getting that early lore and also that early disruption from your opponent. I've been liking Meg more and more lately. The fact that this can trade into stuff if you really need it to means that, like, let's say you played like an early Olaf or an early Pascal, Meg can turn that into a 3-1 and trade very nicely into it after the Pascals really, use its effects. And since we do have a lot of like good, healthy bodies, like Cheshire Cat being a 3-3, or even Jasper being a 5-4, that gets a lot of good removal for just being able to do this. And then like Meg later can get some questing in from there. We do have like Hans being able to get the additional 3 lore, which is great. Tinkerbell being an evasive 2-3. Kuzco obviously has just such a good card, being able to use this to not only guarantee lore, but unless they use like Be Prepared, it's very, very difficult to get rid of this guy, and usually trades very well because of it too. Mad Hatter because we can't run 8 copies of Kuzco. Genie because it does help you get momentum back. It has evasive and helps you there. John Silver. And then also I'd say the card that's been getting a little bit more attention is the Mother Gothel. So being able to use the effect, well, this card is exerted, opposing characters can't quest. So being able to use this to prevent your opponent from going for game and help you set up your own game, especially since you have so many of these evasive cards, it helps you out a lot. So that's definitely a card that I'm going to be trying out a little bit. I do like John Silver still, and it has gone up in price since I've, about a month ago when I've been kind of playing this deck more. I think people are kind of realizing that this card does get a lot of value, and the fact that it does prevent not only your opponent from questing with the card on play, but also whenever you quest, and the Reckless into something like Kuzco or Cheshire Cat or even Mad Hatter can get you advantage and lose your opponent advantage too, which is really nice. So other than that, we play Friends on the Other Side because the card's broken, and Mother's Knows Best because it is able to get you that momentum, and we do have a lot of good cards that can sing for 3. So that's pretty much all the decks we're going to go over for this one. The rest of the top 8 are pretty much variants of the decks we've already seen, more or less. But I do want to say, thanks again to TCG Player for hosting this event, or sponsoring it, as well as Apex Gaming and hosting by Lost Boys, and also Scott's Mind's original article, which I really recommend you guys go out and read. It's really well written, and I think it has a lot of facts and their own opinions for how these decks work. And I really recommend the read as well. So that's going to be it for me. Again, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to check the description for links to all this stuff, and I'll catch you all next time.
Damn it. Damn it.